Future Work by James Abella. 65% of children entering primary school today will end up working in completely new job types that don't yet exist. That's from the World Economic Forum, and it really suggests that education needs to be about skills and ideas rather than blocks of content that we can learn. Computers have already taken many jobs, such as clerks and bookkeepers. If we look back to the 1940s and 1950s, this is what an office might have looked like, with clerks doing thousands of bits of paper. All of that has now disappeared, so it shows that the first wave of computerization has already been and gone. The other thing that's really important to remember about computers and robots is that imagine having your very best teacher, your very best doctor. Well, the great thing about a computer is you can copy it 1,000,000 times over, so it's always running the very best software that's available. And I think that's really important. It's not the average teacher or the average person. Computers and robots, they work on the very best version. And that's very important for this presentation going forward. So I've divided this presentation up into 4 segments, and this is a bit of a simplification of the research. But in the red is anything where there are high salaries and routine jobs. Orange, high salaries, highly creative, low salaries, routine. And the green, which is of much less interest to a computer, low salaries, highly creative. And when you look through these kind of jobs, you'll understand why certain jobs are a much bigger target for automation. If it's high salaries and it's routine, it's easy money for the computers. A few well-placed algorithms, a little bit of good data analysis can make this easy money for computers. So for example, lawyers in conveyancing, where they're doing routine work, they're not defending themselves in court, they're not doing the big and exciting stuff, they're doing the routine paperwork. That is easy money and has already been taken over by several chatbots for things like parking fines, and even now for immigration it's being used. Accountants, unless you're doing something creative or presenting the figures in an interesting way, computers can already do a large amount of the works that bookkeepers and clerks could do, so accountants is a diminishing profession. Actuaries and economists. With actuaries, these are being replaced by e-commerce, websites, economists. If they're only looking at data and processing data and not providing insight into that, again, that work won't be needed going forward because computers have the power, have the algorithms to run through formulae. And in fact, economists have already noticed a big reduction in the number of jobs that would have been available going back several decades. The other angle to this is where there's a high cost of mistakes. Doctors misdiagnosing, there is a good chance that doctors will be replaced. Not your regular GP necessarily, but the software and the diagnostics could be replaced. So you might see actually less doctors because of the high cost of mistakes and the increasing accuracy of diagnosis from computers. And the other one, of course, is something you probably wouldn't normally have sent a person to, but things like astronauts, where there's a very high risk of damage, a very high risk of casualties. It's much better to send a robot in because you can afford to take those risks and you only lose a piece of electronics. The other great thing about a robot is it can automatically be sending back data, so you can learn from your mistakes right up to the moment that the machine is destroyed. Low salaries routine. This is an orange one because although these are things, some of these things are easy to do, but humans could actually be cheaper, particularly in poorer parts of the world. So this is an example in Japan where labour is incredibly high cost, so they have a robot hotel. It takes only 10 people to manage the machines. When you think about it, those 10 people are probably highly expert, and actually it's the novelty of going to a robot hotel rather than the practicality of it that happens here. So highly creative and high salaries. This is orange because if a computer can find a way to do it, then the job is at risk, but we think these are going to be hard. So we look at computer art, movies, anything which requires a high degree of creativity. They're difficult for computers, but they are potentially lucrative. So if you can find the right way to do it, yes, it will happen. Low salaries, highly creative. These are the jobs which are least likely to be taken. Jobs such as an author. You may see J.K. Rowling, you may see a few very exceptional authors who've made a lot of money, but the majority of authors make very little money. Somebody once told me, you can be an author, but it's only half a salary. And for the vast majority of authors, that's the truth. Mental health professionals, social workers, those people are all about communication skills, and it's highly unlikely a robot will be able to replace those entirely. Gardener, it's a low salary, it's highly creative, requires a very wide range of movements, of thinking, and so highly unlikely to be replaced. Other jobs that are highly likely are those that are highly interpersonal. Teachers are actually in the very, very bottom 1% of jobs that are likely to be replaced. Good news for me. Therapists. That one-to-one connection with somebody is incredibly difficult to replace with a robot. Even if the robot is perfectly competent, that final step is quite difficult. Entertainer. A lot of people say, oh, robot wars, or robot this, or robot that. But actually, when you think about it, it's the character, it's the person that's doing it. It's the connection you have with the entertainer that makes it important. For a similar reason, professional sports people are unlikely to be made by machines because they're too predictable. And that's why those jobs are very unlikely to be replaced. Of course, if you can't beat them, program them. Coding is obviously coding, training, fixing, engineering those computers is always going to be in demand because making them better, improving them, monitoring them, supervising them, that's a job that's going to happen. And so I bring you down to the 3 future skills that are going to be incredibly important. Creativity, people skills, and coding. Those are the skills children of the future are certainly going to need for the world's majority of jobs. And if you enjoyed this presentation, you can read the magazine.